Welcome to Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Crack Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we've got another edition of The Deciding Point for all of you listeners, our weekly breakdown of all of the action happening around the Division I college tennis world. Of course, on Tuesday nights, we talk about the Division I women's action, and once again, it was another fantastic week of results for us to discuss. No questions left about Oklahoma. They have established themselves as one of the top contenders for the national championship. Another fantastic weekend for them as they knock off Baylor. And of course, a dramatic 4-3 victory over conference rivals Texas as well. You move beyond Oklahoma. Certainly Texas A&M. They're starting to answer that question as well. They earned their biggest win of the season, 7-0 over Georgia. Not only a clean sweep, but they do that on the road in Athens. Of course, you look elsewhere, whether it's the Pac-12, ACC, Big Ten, even non-Power 5 results, so many things for us to touch on today's show. And of course, if you're going to cover all the action in the Division I women's college tennis world, you better have some people to help you along the way. Thankfully, I have the best man to turn to for all things Division I women's college tennis. Of course, you know him best as your co-favorite writer on our website, crackrackets.com, founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog, our West Coast college tennis correspondent, and of course, my friend, returning champion John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. Another week in the books. How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm good. I was waiting for and he went 0-2 on predictions for the week in the intro. But I guess I'll do the preemptive strike there. You predicted both of the Oklahoma and Texas A&M outcomes. So props to you, my friend. You know, when they come far and few between, you got to give the recognition where it's due. So credit to you. And I'm doing well. We have so much to talk about again. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have taken enough victory laps on this year's shows that it was about time that I got one. And I figured I was going to be taking a big enough victory lap when we talk about Texas A&M, a team I think we both know. I think the listeners tuning in today and those tuning in live on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel, Scotty B and the gang, as always, welcome into the show. Appreciate. Hopefully you have us on the side tab and then the ongoing Tsitsipas Alcaraz battle in Miami on the right side of your screen right now. But yeah, I intend to take a victory lap today because some things certainly broke my way from a result standpoint. Of course, in typical fashion, we had a sneak into the finish line before the show result in Cal knocking off Pepperdine. And we had a whole plan to talk about Pepperdine, their successes over the past weekend. However, we're going to sneak that match into that segment as well. Rest assured, we saw the result. We're going to talk about it today. But again, plenty for us to discuss. We'll get to the headline results. We'll play another game of good win, bad loss. We expanded our rankings to the top 16 this week, so we can play a game not only of cross-up, but we can start talking about those teams in the hunt for the NCAA host regions. Of course, we'll do all of that, preview the week ahead, and more on today's show. Of course, the reason we're able to do this week in, week out is because of the support we get from all of you, and that means not only you fans tuning in, but to the players, coaches who tune in, who support our work, who provide us the information to make these shows exciting. We are immensely grateful for their support, for all of you in the college tennis world who have embraced us and are along with us trying to provide college tennis with the platform, the attention that we know it deserves. Of course, a huge thank you to our friends at SwingVision as well for their support of this show. And you all know it's artificial intelligence for your tennis. The latest and greatest innovations in the technology world are happening with our friends at SwingVision. It is, again, the most efficient way to improve your game. You get the SwingVision app. You're going to set up the app while you hit. When you're done, you're going to have film breaking down the action, talking about the forehands you made, forehands you missed, why you need to work on your serve. You have in-app coaching options as well, and so much more. If you want to learn more, click on the link in the description to this show. And again, when you eventually do sign up, use our promo code CRACK20. You'll get a free 14-day pro trial, $20 discount as well. We wouldn't tell you about it if we weren't so sure it's the future of the game, folks. So excited to be partnered with our friends at SwingVision. Learn more about them by clicking on the link in the description to this show. Of course, a huge thank you, as always, to our friends at Turner as well. You know all about Turner Grip. So I'll simply say this. Contact sales@uniquesports.com today to learn more. You mentioned we sent you. They'll get you discounted pricing, free samples. They'll treat you like family. Everyone uses Turner Grip for for a reason. You should start using them today. If you are not, contact sales@uniquesports.com to get involved with the tournament team today. With all of that said, let's talk some college tennis here on today's show. And the place we're going to start is with, I think even in tennis, it's the Red River rivalry between these two teams. And that, of course, is Oklahoma taking on Texas. And, I was fortunate enough to be at the national indoors when these two teams faced off. And, for Oklahoma, who had such a chip on their shoulder, really through that entire first 2-month stretch of the season, they knock off Texas 4-1 at the indoors. And certainly that was the announcement on the grandest of national stages. Okay, Oklahoma's here to play. Now, they're 19-1 overall on the season. Their one loss, a national indoor final to UNC, where they won doubles in 4 first sets, just weren't able to hang on to the victory. They've beaten everyone since that match. They've beaten everyone fairly comfortably as well. Their close match, a 5-2 win over UCF. They got pushed this weekend. I know that says a 6-1 win over Baylor. Worth noting, all 3 of the matches at the 4 through 6 singles position win 3 sets. Now, all of them were swept by Oklahoma. Why is that relevant? Well, against the Longhorns, Oklahoma drops the doubles point. Now, they do get a straight set victory from Carmen Corley, 5-5 over Kylie Collins. And that's another fantastic victory for Corley here this season. Shanta, though, straight sets over Shavatapan. We can talk about that in a second. Straight set win for Pisareva over Uvrutsky. But then the clincher for Staker, 7-6 in the third. She was down multiple match points. I believe it was 5-6, love 40 in that third set. I mean, Jay, we say it all the time. A lot of teams can be good at the top. It's the bottom of the lineup that distinguish the elite from the very good in college tennis. Shanta, Pisareva, Staker, 6-0 on the weekend in singles. It's not new news, but this Oklahoma team's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this really solidified the fact that they are the real deal. And just, I mean, to put it into context, right? I mean, how often do we see a team finish just inside the top 25 and the very next season be formidable top 3, one of the best teams in the country, let alone a team that has never been there before, right? So what this Oklahoma program has done this season is truly remarkable. And I thought this match was sort of a microcosm of what they've been able to do this season. You did all of those Power 5 coaching interviews, and one of the questions you asked was, what do you want, people to take away when you watch your teams play? And so many coaches talked about, we want them to take away, our girls are tough, or our players fight hard. This Oklahoma team embodies that to me. I mean, Texas did to Oklahoma what Oklahoma has done to so many other teams in that doubles point, and they stole that doubles point. Oklahoma was up serving 5-4 in that first set. They were up 4-2 in the breaker, 6-5 in the breaker. They lose both of those matches. And I'm thinking, oh man, this might not be Oklahoma's day, because it feels like Texas is playing the Oklahoma role today. And they just came through in those bottom positions, 4, 5, and 6, and particularly Staker, the freshman, who we saw that sort of performance at indoors. It continues. It's just a remarkable performance against the defending national champions, and one that you certainly say, like, they are a beyond legit contender at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the stats are excellent. And certainly they lose this doubles point to Texas, which is not a common occurrence for this frequent occurrence for this Oklahoma team. And certainly, they're still working in new pieces, right? Donna Guzman still not her healthiest. We haven't seen her in singles yet. I actually spoke with Oklahoma women's tennis head coach Audra Cohen, a conversation you can hear at length tomorrow on the Cracked Interviews podcast feed. She says the plan is still to work Guzman into some singles action here down the home stretch of the season. But, again, you're right. They drop that doubles point, and you look for them. I think they dropped 3 first sets in singles as well. And yet, as always, you knew this team wasn't going anywhere. And credit to Peyton Stearns, who has played some really good tennis of late and continues to establish herself as one of the 5 best players in women's college tennis this season. And I think on the right day, she is right there with Navarro as the players to beat. And she gets a 4-3 win over Lane Sleeth. That's a really good win for Peyton Stearns. It's a really good win for their freshman Sabina Zainalova as well, to knock off Ivana Corley in straight sets. Corley's been so good this year at the 3 spot.
Yeah. Zainalova is still undefeated.
Yeah, the Shabatapan struggles are now just real. I mean, it's 2.5 months into the season now, and for whatever reason, she's just not the lock she was last year. Whether it's at the 4 spot, the 3 spot, those struggles continue. That said, Shanta took it to her, and like the two-handed game, it just works. The power she can bring, the relentlessness, it works. I don't know how you're going to take Pisareva out of the lineup. She's been so good, or Staker at 6. Like, they have just been such sure things. It's the greatest of luxuries and challenges to face, right? When you've got more than 6 players who can fill out a lineup and you feel confident about them. But that's the only question left about this Oklahoma team is it's like, does Guzman bring another dimension? And we still have a few matches left, plus the Pepperdine Nugget, the best gem at the end of the season, to figure that out.
Yeah, well, I'd argue Guzman already has had an immediate impact in slotting in at number 3 doubles. I mean, they won 6-0 against Texas. Even if they have her down at doubles at number 3, feel really good about that. I imagine it sounds like Coach Cohen agrees with this, but it sounds like they'll slot her in some of these other Big 12 matches, get some reps in. And look, I mean, we're still 6 weeks out from where they would need her most. So they've got time, but even in doubles, it's been a huge plus.
Yeah, and again, this is why I highly recommend you watch this show on YouTube Live when we record it, is because right now on our screen, we have the clips of Staker fighting off the match points. I had the chance to speak with Coach Cohen about the excitement of that moment and, obviously more broadly, the excitement surrounding her team right now, it coming down to the line with Staker. I have Coach's reaction. I wanted to know what's going through her head. 5-6 love 40. We have that answer for you now. Super producer Daniel Westoff, roll the clip.
I have no idea, Alex. I just remember looking over at her. She went down love 30, and I said, Emma, just play. Just play tennis. You know how to play tennis and enjoy it and battle as much as you can. And I mean, no, you put your heart out here regardless. And so she just played. She was ended up being down love 40 there, and then she played 3 really good points just on offense, like hit a big serve, then a backhand down the line winner. I mean, just played 3 really great points. And then the 4th point, it was a little shaky. I think we got a little bit lucky there, and she'll take it. But I do think that her ability to step up and say, all right, I'm just going to do whatever I can here. And she owned that moment. And the second she decided to own it, really took it over and sent it to a 3rd set breaker. And then she could breathe a little bit there.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, Oklahoma takes a 4-3 win over Texas, 6-1 win over Baylor. Again, 19-1 overall, in command now to capture the conference title. On the flip side, I think Baylor comes out of this weekend looking really good. I think they have bounced back. And again, their loss early in the season, their win, they beat Miami, if memory serves me correct, right? Or no, they lose to Miami in the kickoff weekend. That loss has appreciated in value, certainly, given what we know about the Hurricanes now. And yeah, there were some one-off surprises, certainly for Baylor early in the season, but they're healthy. They play this Oklahoma team really close. On the flip side with Texas, do they have, outside of their success against Cal, do they have a signature win on the season? Like, you look for this group, again, we know how good Stearns is. I think Collins at 2. She hasn't been elite. It's not Anna Tarati at the number 2 spot for the Longhorns this season, but I think Kylie Collins has been pretty good at that 2 spot. Obviously, Zainalova has been exceptional at 3. No Rapalou for them this weekend against Oklahoma. Are you out on Texas? Are you crossing them off? Where are you?
I feel better about Texas after that match than I did
too,
probably
right?
going
It's
into
weird.
the weekend. Yeah, I mean, look, they beat Oklahoma State, right? Like, let's not forget they beat Oklahoma State in that first match. And then they go to Oklahoma and they play them 4-3 close. I think what I've liked about this Texas team is their doubles has improved. They played around a lot with double pairings early in the season. They've now won consistently some good doubles points. If they can win doubles, you feel like they're a 3-point team. Doubles, Stearns, and Zainalova. You can't tell me you can't find one more. Like, I feel better about this. If they're this close to Oklahoma's level, then there's no reason they can't make another deep run.
I agree with you. I think Shavatsman's clearly not playing her best yet. Neither is Rapalou. They were proven commodities, played so well last season. They've earned the benefit of the doubt. I hope these teams play a third time in the Big 12 championship because I think that would be a very exciting match. I do wonder if Texas has enough to be a top 8 seed. Like, do they have to beat Oklahoma to ensure themselves one of those spots? Probably not. I think they're going to be okay. Certainly this Cal win over Pepperdine helps their case. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm coming out of the weekend glass half full with Texas and thinking, hey, they actually look better. And by the way, thank you, Scotty B. It was Miami who played USC, not Baylor in the kickoff weekend. I'm blanking there. It happens. There's a lot of matches jumping around in the brain. That said, I feel pretty good about Baylor. I feel pretty good about about Texas, but you feel exceptional if you're an Oklahoma fan. 19-1 overall, and again, cruising right now. And if you'd like to hear more about their season, how everything has clicked in Norman, and what they plan on doing moving forward to stay motivated, listen tomorrow to my Cracked Interviews podcast, extended conversation with head coach Audra Cohen. She is always such a pleasure to have the chance to speak with, and I promise it is an entertaining conversation that all of you listeners will enjoy. With that said, let's move on to our next headline from the course of the past week. I told you, Jay. I told you this Texas A&M team was good. See, we can just get right into it. I said Texas A&M's a national title contender. I have said on this podcast, that's what I always like, is we can check the tape, folks, that had they beaten Cal, and let's just go back. And this Texas A&M team, 22-1 now overall on the season, 4-3 win in Knoxville over Tennessee, 7-0 win over Georgia in Athens this past weekend. Their one loss on the season, round of 16, national indoors, 3-all, comes down to the number 6 singles position, 5-4, far sideline. We don't have to relitigate a call. Did she give a hand gesture to say it was in? Did the line judge not see it? You can ask 50 different people and hear a bunch of different answers. Point being, Cal goes on to win the match. Point goes to Cal for 5-all instead of 6-4 A&M. Cal goes on to win the match 4-3. I swear to God, Jay, and I've said this repeatedly, had A&M won that match, they're beating Pepperdine the next day. And if they earn those 2 wins to start the season, the narrative around this Texas A&M team would be completely different. Now, ultimately, they did not win the match, and they got a good win over ODU, and they got a good win over USC, and certainly it was a 2-1 performance. But as I told Coach Weaver, coming off of that weekend, it felt like that A&M team was so disgusted with their 2-1 weekend, and to lose in the round of 16 and to be knocked out on that stage early. They were just like, you could tell around the team, they said, they're never letting that happen again. They haven't lost since that Cal match. And you look for them. I mean, again, the numbers for this team are just laughable, Jay. When you look at it, 45-8 overall in doubles, individual sets. They've won 84.9% of their double sets. Well, in singles, they've failed. They're 107-20. They've only won 84.3% of their singles matches. I mean, yeah, they've piled on against some teams, certainly, that they should be beating comfortably. But you look at them this start to the SEC season, 5-2 win against Florida, 7-0 win against Georgia, 4-3 against Tennessee. To go at the Mississippis and drop only 2 points, I think is a pretty impressive performance. To beat a South Carolina team 6-1 that I think has gotten a lot better since the start of the season. I mean, they're, for lack of a better term, sorry, West, they're kicking ass and taking names. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a remarkable performance against Georgia. I believe it was the second time Texas A&M has ever beaten Georgia in the history of that series. So it was a pretty remarkable performance. I don't know if I ever really disagreed with you on this Texas A&M team. I'm not going to backtrack, but definitely, I mean, you couldn't have gotten a more disappointing 2-1 national indoors, right? Because both the ODU win and the USC win depreciated pretty quickly after that. So it's certainly disappointing for them not to have, not to come away with some top 10 wins there. Look, the thing about this Texas A&M team is the question becomes, how good do you feel about the SEC? And the SEC has had a few down years the past few years. You look at the top of the SEC, you look at Georgia. So Georgia team who lost to 2 ACC teams in Virginia and NC State at national indoors. And so it's clear that Texas A&M is the elite of the SEC this year. They just beat down Georgia 7-0. How elite is that? On paper, I think it's pretty good, but I would have liked to have seen them play some non-conference matches instead of beating Tarleton, McNeese, Prairie View, all of these teams that they did run up their records on to get a gauge, right, for what this team looks like. But I'll give you this. I feel really good about 3 points on this team, and I feel good about the other 4. So they have answers everywhere. It's just tough when their best win now is Georgia, which was always been another team that we didn't know much about.
True. I would say getting to watch the SEC every week, this women's conference is deep. Like, I don't know if they're as top heavy as they've once been, but there's just if your 7 team is Arkansas or Alabama in that number 7 ranking, or Vanderbilt in the SEC. Those are good teams this year. Despite all of Vanderbilt's struggles, I still think they're solid. And obviously Auburn right now, top 10 team. Even if you think that's very heavy, they're really good everywhere. I don't think there's a definitive weakness in their lineup. And to your point, that is Texas A&M's biggest strength. They are not bad anywhere. Like, I know that sounds stupid, but they have options. They can find 4 points by every different permutation calculation you want to turn to, whether you want it to be Stoyana, Pilette, and Townsend, 4, 5, 6. Okay, on the right day, you can get that. If you needed, and it's always going to be Makarova at 2. She's undefeated, 17-0 at the season. She is playing the best tennis of her career as a 5th year. The ultimate luxury at the 2 spot. Again, you like her against, I don't care, anyone in the country. Whether it be a Corley, whether it be, Elizabeth Scotty, I don't care. Give me Tatiana Makarova right now. JC Goldsmith has lost twice at the number 4 position. I think she's 15-2. Stoyana, Pilette, they're just racking up victories and confidence as freshmen. And then you've got options at the 6th spot. But if Katya Townsend's going to be healthy, that's the option you turn to. And 2-3 win for her over on a hurdle this weekend against Georgia. She was one of 2 straight set victories. The other one, JC Goldsmith, who we haven't, again, straight set win over Meg Kowalski. I think this A&M team can continue to get better. Just more reps for Stoyana, Pilette, Carson Brandstein, who's playing her first full season, even if she's been around the college game for a while. I also would push back on Georgia because, again, from an eye test perspective, they have been cruising through the SEC, and they have been answering all of the questions that have been asked. I would also point out they lost 4 3-set matches in this matchup. And yeah, it was at home, but Viadmanova is still a freshman. Riasco's still a freshman. Leah Ma is not exactly a veteran by any stretch of the imagination. This was really still one of their first tastes of that sort of action. And so does this mean we need the accelerated learning curve for Georgia right now? It's like the margin of error is gone. You lost the one match, that's fine, but you probably have to beat A&M at the conference tournament if you want to ensure that you're a top 8 seed. Georgia can still do that, and I think that's a question about them. But I don't hold I think A&M's answered all the questions. I think they are that good, even if the schedule is a little soft.
Yeah, and that could very well be, right? I think a few things that might be coloring my information here is the SEC didn't look that strong in indoors. You looked at, Florida struggled. Georgia, obviously, I mentioned their losses. But look,
but
we can say
matches were close. Florida lost a couple 4-3, right? And Georgia was right there with NC State. Should have won that doubles point. Highway robbery that they did not win at the number 2 spot. And again, that was the freshman there for Georgia. And, again, they're right there against Virginia as well in that match. I think that you're right that you got to win the matches. Otherwise, you lost them, and a loss is a loss. I can spin it glass half full as much as I'd like. At the same time, I think the SEC is good. Not great, but definitely good.
Yeah, it's relative to the ACC, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
The SEC is probably the 2nd best conference in the country. That is good. So I'm not saying that. It's just tough to know where, Texas A&M is a top 10 team. They've clearly proven that. It's just tough to know whether they're 4 right behind,
sure.
Our kind of top 3, or if it's 6, 7, 8. That's a little bit tough to figure out right now. But on paper, right, you're just looking at that talent and you walk through the names. they're going to be favored against pretty much almost all the teams that they're going to face.
I think they're in the second tier. If it's North Carolina's in tier 1A on their own right now, Oklahoma, NC State tier 1B, I think tier 2 is A&M and a couple other schools. On the right week, again, on the right day, you'll say Pepperdine. On the wrong day, you'll say not Pepperdine. There are a bunch of other tier 2 teams right now, and I think the cluster of teams in that tier is what makes this season so fascinating. But yeah, I think the Aggies are definitively there, and I had the chance actually, because obviously there have been some good schools, good teams to come through Texas A&M, and the last time the NCAA tournament was in Champaign, the A&M women made the women's final.
That's a great point.
In that NCAA year 2013. With that in mind, I wanted to ask Coach Weaver, and you can hear a full conversation breaking down all the freshmen, what's clicked, of course, on the Cracked Interviews podcast as well. That's right, folks. Make it up for lost time with a 2 Cracked Interviews podcast Wednesday. But I straight up asked him, is this the best team he's had during his tenure at College Station? Let's hear what Coach Weaver had to say.
Yeah, there's hardly a match that we approach that we know we're the better team. We really believe we're the better team. We really feel like every position, if we play well, we're going to win. And that's a lot of confidence to bring, individually on each girl's court, and knowing that your teammates playing next to you are going to have a great shot at winning. And I would say me as the head coach, it's my 7th year now. I would say this is our best team. We had some really good teams back when I worked with Howard Jaffe, and we'll wait and see. This might be as good of a team as we had at 2013. When you beat Georgia 7-0 at Georgia, we actually never beat Georgia back in those years. So who knows? Maybe Georgia's. I think they're a pretty comparable team now than what they were then. So who knows? That's a while back. Well, I guess we'll wait and see how the season plays out. I feel like on a talent basis right now, it's about as good as I can recall from any of our years, and we'll see how we finish.
We will indeed see how they finish. So A&M, again, a 2-0 weekend, 4-3 over Tennessee, 7-0 over Georgia. On the flip side, it was a really nice bounce back win for Tennessee the next day, and I believe I'm blanking on who they beat, but they beat someone pretty soundly 7-0 on the Sunday. And then you look, so for Tennessee, 1-1, and they had a rough couple of matches in SEC conference play, but I thought it was a good bounce back weekend for them. I mean, they were whiskers away from winning that match against A&M in Knoxville. I would also, if they win that number 1 doubles set, which was a back and forth affair, ultimately Goldsmith and Makarova take it. There were like 5 straight breaks, I think, in the middle of that set. I thought they were right there. And again, 7-0 sounds way worse than the match really was for Georgia, where I thought the fact that they're a little freshman reliant and youth reliant up top, like it got exposed a bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the battle at 3 though was all freshmen. That was quite the battle. But yeah, I mean, I think this is, a match that Georgia will learn a lot from with their, Riasco at 2, Vidmanova at 3. They'll learn a lot from this. Even Hurtle hasn't played a lot in singles. This is her first real full singles season. So I think they'll take a lot from this. They'll be looking forward to the SEC tournament. But overall, I just want to go on the record. Okay. Is Texas A&M a national contender team? Yes.
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
Welcome to the club. I've got room for you. I made a little spot on the bandwagon. On the flip side, by the way, for Tennessee, it was a rough stretch. And the match they'd want back is South Carolina, which they lost 4-1 in Columbia. But, they faced the gauntlet. And they would have really liked, you think, to get at least 1 win to try and stake a claim as a top 16 seed. But, they're knocked off by Florida, by Georgia, by A&M. The bounce back win was 7-0 over LSU at home, an LSU team that's healthy. And I think so much better than they were at this. Like, if this was the LSU team we saw at kickoff weekend and we had from the start of the season, they would be below the NCAA cutoff line. Like, they would be in the top 40. Not a doubt in my mind. Now, it's probably, to quote my girl JoJo, too little, too late. But that's a really nice bounce back win for Tennessee. And look, there are still points on the board. Auburn, Alabama swing. If Tennessee sweeps that, interesting. If they beat Arkansas as well, they'll need some things to go their way. Certainly, they'd have to have a really good SEC tournament, probably get to the semifinals or better. but I wouldn't completely write them off yet of an NCAA hostship. And again, that's something we'll talk about more as we get towards our rankings discussion at the end of this show. Again, you look for Georgia. They've beaten everyone they needed to beat. And now that they've lost to A&M, okay, that's fine for them. Certainly, if they run the gauntlet the rest of the way in the conference, get another shot at A&M and win that match in the conference tournament, top 8 seed, very, very much in play. With that said, though, let's move on to some of the other action that happened across the country. And you're our West Coast correspondent, so we go out to the West Coast now. Stanford, Cal, sweeping USC. Stanford 5-2 over the Trojans, Cal 4-3. Subsequently, obviously, Cal just earns another 4-3 win over Pepperdine as well. If the question is which Pac-12 teams can separate themselves, and this is where I'll sneak in this conversation. UCLA's had to cancel a bunch of matches. That UCLA-Stanford match canceled, and it's been 2 weekends in a row for the Bruins. Just as they were gaining steam, we don't really know if they're on this tier or not. Is the Pac-12 race right now essentially a Stanford versus Cal sort of race?
Yeah, it is, certainly for the regular season title, right? Because I believe the UCLA matches are just straight up canceled, not rescheduled. So Stanford and Cal won't face UCLA until the actual tournament. So for the regular season, it's going to come down to that April match between Stanford and Cal, who both look fairly comparable if you look at kind of how they did against the shared opponent in USC this weekend, but certainly not when you look at how they both did respectively against Pepperdine. So yeah, the regular season title will come down to Stanford and Cal.
Yeah, and when is that match? What, 2 weekends from now?
It is it's the middle weekend in April, I think.
Yeah. Do we know where?
It's in Berkeley.
Are you going?
Do I need to go now?
Well, how far is Berkeley?
It's not that far.
Yeah, you need to go.
Okay.
Yeah, you have a homework assignment, my friend.
Okay.
I'm so conflicted on this Cal team. I watch them, and there are moments when it screams year away. Just screams year away. And I don't know, maybe Pepperdine's just the opposite of their kryptonite. So obviously the sun for Superman, but whatever that special, equation is that just brings out their best tennis, that seems to be Pepperdine for them. Team just scraps. Like, they've got grinders everywhere. Wiersholm loses her first match, 3 sets today to Janice Chen, but she looked, again, excellent against USC, and you feel like this team between Giovara and whomever they're playing at 2, whether it's El Shola, whether it's, Ivanov, that they can steal one of the top 2, they can steal one of 3 and 4, and they should take one, if not both, of 5 and 6. It's like they're going to get 3 singles matches. It's can they find a 4th point?
Yeah, I actually think the bookends of their team is actually the weaker positions, right? Sure. Giovara, I'm not sure, is even batting 500 this year. And Ivanov actually played 6 today. I think she's been out for a while. So that's where it gets dicey. The strength of this is Alsola has looked good, Wiersholm has looked excellent, and Rosenquist, right? Like, those are
Which
3.
Which Wiersholm, Katja or Henrik?
Well, now the combined duo of them on court. So the Katja coached Wiersholm, or the Henrik coached Katja, although, maybe he's to blame for the loss today. But I mean, those are really the strength of this lineup, is that middle portion. And yeah, I mean, look, they get beaten easily by UCLA. They come back out, a few weeks later, they beat Pepperdine. I have no idea what to make of this Cal team, but this win for them, it was going to be a battle between Cal and USC and UCLA and Stanford for a top 16 seed. This puts Cal up in the conversation of top 8 seed, particularly if they win out in the Pac-12. I think they'll be a top 8 seed.
Yeah, you look at the projected rankings via our friend Chris Halioris at College Tennis Ranks, and I'm going to hit refresh real quick because I forgot to do that post this victory. You look for Cal right now with their win. I believe they're up to number 12 in the projected rankings. I don't know if that factors in their victory today over. It probably doesn't.
It doesn't. It does on the what if. I looked at that earlier. Cal's up to 9.
9 on the what if. Yeah, what's crazy is they've beaten Pepperdine twice and they're not a top 8 team, and that speaks to, again, the loss at Michigan and just some of the funkiness. So they've got a win over A&M as well, a win that appreciates more and more with value. They've got, if they beat Stanford, if they beat UCLA, this team will be top 8 come the end of the season. And again, this is a team that's extraordinarily young. We will talk about them as national title contenders next season for certain. The question is it a year early for them? Can they do it 3 matches in a row over the course of 3 days? I think that's a question all of us are waiting to see answered.
2 days for the women, though, because they get a day off.
Between, so it goes Elite 8, day off, semifinals, finals. That's interesting. Okay, yeah. That'll be
men have to go 3 straight.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 days though. That's a lot of tennis consecutive.
Still a lot.
So, yes, that'll be interesting to monitor. Ditto, by the way, for the Stanford team, which you look in again the projected rankings coming into things. Stanford right now number 17 in the latest iteration of the projected rankings. I mean, again, this team's really good. I don't know if they're great. If they had Michaela Gordon, they would for sure be great because that's what they're missing is just a little more oomph at the top of their lineup just to solidify that top 3 because I think Ma and Yapafanova can be excellent. I think there's a lot of pressure on them to be excellent match in, match out as Stanford still tries to figure out 3, 4, and 5. They were really good this weekend. And again, on the right weekend, they're going to look excellent. I'm not out on Stanford, but they're not making the NCAA final in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to win the tournament. They're not going to make the final. Connie Ma is excellent. And, the only match she's lost this dual season is that match to Emma Navarro.
The amount of people who, when they ask me, what is it, what's going on right now in the college tennis world, usually in the first 3 things I say is, well, if Connie Ma decides she wants to be a pro tennis player, she's going to be really freaking good because, oh my God, is Connie Ma good.
Yeah, and that was an incredible match. I tweeted out I was disappointed with Coach Swain switching Cayetano down to 2 to rob us of the Cayetano-Connie Ma match. But Salma Ewing played incredible tennis. And, I mean, she threw the kitchen sink at Connie Ma. And Connie Ma had answers throughout. I mean, just incredible court sense, incredible shot selection. I mean, she just is able – she doesn't not going to dominate with you with power, but she's still able to be the aggressor in so many of these points. I was super impressed and continue to be in watching her play.
Yeah, it's, again, just really good tennis across the board. I think the Stanford team is playing really well. It's interesting. We talked about the same way with Georgia. I actually thought USC played way better this weekend, and it's a shame that they go 0-2 because they're probably out of top 16 contention now just with how rough a stretch that they've had. At the same time, I don't want them in my region. I still think they have a very good chance of making the NCAA round of 16.
Yeah, what's going to be frustrating about all of this is you're going to have Cal and Pepperdine be the top, 16 seeds, and then where they're going to face Stanford, USC, and all of their regionals. But no, I thought USC looked good, and particularly Cayetano, who both got wins over Yapafanova and Alsola. Those are good wins for her. Those are much needed confidence boosters. And Ewing played great against Connie Ma, even though she lost. She beat Giavara. This USC team, they've got answers in a lot of positions, particularly with Naomi Chung back. It's good to see them healthy, but it's going to be tough to be a top 16 seed.
Yeah, it's, again, just everyone's deep. Everyone's really good. And certainly for USC, it's just they got some really good wins early in the season. But now, do they have enough to compete with everyone else? Maybe if they ran the table at the conference championship, which isn't impossible. But certainly, you look Stanford, Cal now, I would say, in the driver's seats as you look at the Pac-12 race. Let's go to the ACC now. Talk about our upset of the weekend. Florida State coming to life. 4-2 win over Duke. And again, for a Duke team that makes this, goes 0-2 against the South Florida teams, although I don't know if Florida State's technically South Florida, but they lose to Florida State. They lose to Miami this weekend as well. And, again, for the Duke team that I believe hadn't lost since the kickoff weekend to Oklahoma, a loss that is certainly appreciated in value. There's a lot to like about the Duke core. We know what Drummy and Chen and, Chloe Beck are capable of. And certainly Jackson and Coleman, the freshmen, have looked very, very good by the standard, by freshman standards here to start the season. That said, Florida State's had the year from hell. And I don't care where the match is played. You can't lose this match 4-2 to Florida State if you want to be a top 8 seed, unequivocally. Bad loss for Duke.
Well,
Great win for Florida State, but bad loss for Duke.
Well, particularly when number 6 singles was forfeited by Florida State, right? They had 5 singles players. Vic Allen got injured in doubles there. Florida State did take doubles, but it wasn't even close. I mean, those matches at 3 and 4 that FSU took, they were dominant performances by FSU, and the only singles victory I think Duke took that was actually played was number 2 singles with Chloe Beck, and that was won by retirement. So just a thumping from Florida State, despite being shorthanded, despite not having many of the pieces, and just a very, very bad loss for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one thing for this Duke team, who I still think big picture, these sorts of weekends happen, right? To even the best teams. You're going to go on the road, or you're going to have home weekends where just things don't break your way. But, this team had their full roster in for Duke this week. And it wasn't as though Kelly Chen was out, right? It wasn't as though Georgia Drummy was out this weekend. And yeah, that South Florida swing, going to Miami, going to Florida State, is probably the most brutal swing in the ACC, to play those 2 matches outdoors, late March, early April, when the majority of schools have been practicing inside, just not accustomed to the heat that you get when you play these Florida matches. At the same time, Florida State did not have a 6 singles player. And if you go through this match, you look, it's just, for Billiken to lose in straight sets 1 and 3 at 4, for Kelly Chen to lose 2 and 3 at the 3 spot. The Drummy loss, that's a top 20 battle. That I think you can anticipate happening on the day, but you lose straight sets at 3 and 4, you lose the doubles point as well. That just can't happen.
Yeah, I agree.
And by the way, I would point out that against Miami the next day, you look for this Duke team, again, it was 4 and 5 that lost in straight sets. Billiken lost 0-0 against Miami. I know Audrey Bach-Collins is very, very good, but Duke right now is a player short.
Well, particularly if they're going to go 0-2 from Drummy on the weekend, sure, right?
Exactly.
And not get wins from the top. So right now, Chloe Beck is looking like the only bright spot on this Duke team, and they've got a long ways to go to turn things around. This loss will really hurt them. They're lucky that the ACC is really deep. They've already banked that Virginia win against Travinsky-less Virginia, so it's not total disaster for Duke, right? They'll be still somewhat ranked, and they'll be in the top 16. It's not going to drop them out of that.
No, and they can still be top 8 because they've got the carrots on the end of the stick. North Carolina State, North Carolina is still on the schedule. They get the Tar Heels at home. They're at NC State this Friday, 5 p.m. If they want to be top 8, they need to go 1-1 in those 2 matches.
And add on to what they need to do in the tournament.
Yeah, sure. They probably need to beat one of those top 2 teams maybe twice, get 2 wins over them between now and the end of the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
Certainly beat a Virginia again would help stake their claim, or something like that. And so, yeah, Duke's not out of it. At the same time, what a win. God, did Florida State need this win so badly, just so freaking badly. And that's a great win for the Seminoles. And, again, for Duke, I think it's worth mentioning it's the twofold. It's, had they lost to just Miami this weekend and gone 1-1, I don't think that's a bad weekend, particularly a 4-3 loss at Miami, top 10 team in the country right now. That's just not a bad loss on the road. To go 0-2 that weekend, you just can't afford to, with the race for the top 8 being the margins as thin as they are. And so, great win for Florida State, really tough loss for the Blue Devils. Let's, with that though in mind, get to the best of the rest as we look at what happened throughout the country this weekend. Oklahoma State, I thought, they obviously get the Texas Baylor swing as well. And you look for Oklahoma State, they beat Baylor, get knocked off by Texas. I think they've established themselves as number 3. I know you would agree in that Big 12 race. They're clearly going to be top 16. Pushing for top 8 gets a little tougher after the loss to Texas.
Yeah, assuming that they don't beat Oklahoma or Texas again, which it looks like it will be tough. They've definitely solidified themselves as number 3. I know you had them at number 2.5 with Iowa State. Yeah. I believe that is not the case. They are firmly in the driver's seat at number 3 in the Big 12.
If Oklahoma State played Duke right now, NCAA Sweet 16, who are you taking? Are you just taking the home team?
No, I would definitely take Oklahoma State on the strength of the bottom half of that lineup.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I thought the Cowgirls were excellent. They have, to your point, just the depth. They've just got it. They're another one of those teams. I was joking. I think I was talking about this with you earlier in this show. This is show number 7 for me on the day, so cut me some slack. They're just good everywhere. Like, they're another one of those teams, or they're not bad anywhere, where it's just like, yeah, Lisa Marie Rowe can win at 1 and they can win this match at 4. And on the right day, they're going to look like this at 6. And it's just, they've got options. I would not want to see that team before the NCAA quarterfinals because, yeah, you can absolutely lose to them.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about this is that Texas loss is a little worse than it looks. I mean, Texas was without Shavatapan that day. That's at home against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State needed to win that match.
Yeah, that was a tough one for sure. And again, in the top 8 race particularly, although I do think Oklahoma State has enough right now on the schedule to earn pretty comfortably a top 16 seed.
Yep.
Move on to the Pepperdine Waves, who, it looks like they were, we can officially cross off UC Santa Barbara. They lose to Pepperdine, and we talked about that last week. Pepperdine knocks off LMU as well, both comfortably. And then they lose today 4-3 to Cal. It's like, we don't have to do this segment again because we do it every week. But, like, what do we do with Pepperdine? What do we do?
We just ride the waves.
Yeah, good one. Do you have any new thoughts after today's result?
No, I mean, I pose the thoughts of, like, Flores in no world should be losing at 5 to Cal against Voller Miller in straight sets. That is a bad loss.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you look at the performance again for Pepperdine, they dropped doubles this time, and Brodus and Chen suffer a rare loss at the number 2 spot to Giovara and Ivanov, who are also a ranked team for what it's worth. They go Pachkaleva at the number 3 double spot instead of Shiori Fukuda. That was noticeable to me because my favorite of the pairings was actually Fukuda and Imachkine Fukuda and Pachkaleva as opposed to opposed to today's Imachkine and Pachkaleva. I mean, that's a good win for Fukuda, 2-2 over Giovara. Czar losing in 3 very rarely happens, but what's noticeable to me is like Brodus has worked her way up to the 3 spot. Chen is staying at 4. She gets a really impressive win over Wiersholm today. But yeah, it keeps coming down to like Flores. It's Vicky Flores. I think that's what we really have identified. It's like the Vicky Flores we thought we were getting at the start of the season has not been there to this point of the year. And why we refuse to write them off is because Vicky Flores has earned the benefit of the doubt. All-American, 5th year, playing at 5 singles. Like, it's just too appealing on paper to write off. But it's another loss for her against someone in Voller Miller who really doesn't have the weapons to hurt her.
No, I would say it's been the decline of Flores and also the absence of Pachkaleva and her form this season, right? And we talked about that, so we don't need to rehash it again. But those are the Achilles heels for that team right now. And you pull, not even pull, but if you pull Pachkaleva, you leave Flores in there as taking a loss, just the calculus gets tough. And that's what you saw against Cal today.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And so, again, they're probably still going to be top 8 seed come the NCAA tournament. They've just had so many shots at so many good teams, and they've won a bunch of them. Now they still have that gem at the end of the season again against Oklahoma. And if they win that match
and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, which, by the way, you just feel like Pepperdine is going to sweep those matches, and then we're all going to be riding the waves into the NCAA tournament, and then something ridiculous is going to happen. My Wolverines are going to get revenge or something in the round of 16. Yeah, it's a wave still with the Pepperdine. I think you said it best, so we'll stay there. Let's move to Miami. 12-3 overall are the Miami Hurricanes, and you look for them again. They earned a 6-1 win over Virginia, 4-3 win over Duke. 4-3 win over Wake Forest. Their losses are 4-3 at NC State, 6-1 to North Carolina, then a 4-3 loss kickoff weekend to USC. None of those losses, particularly that USC team at that time, with context, not a single bad loss on the Miami resume right now. And you look for them. The juicy stuff on the ACC calendar is gone. Their last 4 matches, Notre Dame, Louisville, Syracuse, Boston College. That said, they're probably going to be 16-3 heading into the postseason conference play, and they're probably going to be the number 3 seed at the ACC tournament. That said, I don't think of them as a top 8 team. I think for sure they're a top 16 team. Short of making the ACC tournament final, I don't know if I can have them top 8. because like, again, yeah, the wins over Duke, Virginia are good, but if you look at the non-conference play for them, good 4-3 wins over Old Dominion, UCF, Kansas, Georgia Tech. I just don't know if that's going to be enough for top 8. Good, but not great non-conference wins.
Yeah, it might not be enough top 8 on the rankings. And look, I mean, that Virginia win was certainly impressive. But is it an outlier? I was a little disappointed with the score lines in particular against UNC. I thought it was going to be a little bit closer. UNC rolled in singles at 3, 5, and 6, the bottom of the lineup really shining through. Scotty was the lone loss, and then she didn't play the next match. So maybe she was struggling with some health stuff. So yeah, it's tough to know. I mean, it's actually good news for Miami that like the juicy part of the schedule is behind them because they got through unscathed. Now they have the rest of the ACC. I think they've pretty much locked up that top 3 seed, like you mentioned. So it'll come down to the ACC tournament where they'll have to face a UNC and NC State, another Virginia matchup, and we'll see how good they are there.
Simon Earnshaw, please don't get mad at me. I am so ready for Crawley Shanta Part 2 and Pisareva Tengillig Part 2 and Yarlagadda Staker Part 2. Like, God willing, we'll get another UNC-Oklahoma matchup this season because you talk about it, the 4-5-6 for UNC separating themselves that weekend, and they're the real – I obviously watching North Carolina do what they did at the National Indoors, how can you not embrace this team, call them a national title contender? I didn't think this team was as good as last year's team through the first, heading into March. But watching them, the routine nature with which they've ripped through this ACC season, this North Carolina team is that good. Like, they really are that good. And to beat this Miami team in Miami 6-1 in the dominant fashion they did at the bottom of the lineup, like, it's a good win for North Carolina. They are legitimately – I'm still not ready to say the team to beat because I do think Oklahoma on the right day will beat them. I do think NC State on the right day could absolutely beat them as well. But their best, I do think, is the best of anyone.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this in the week ahead, right? About UNC's schedule. But look, I mean, it's relative season to season, right? Like, would this year's UNC team beat last year's UNC team? That's an interesting question.
I think maybe. Before I would have said no for sure. Now I would say maybe because I think Crawley's winning at 4 for sure. I kind of like the doubles of this year's team a little bit better than I liked last year's. I mean, no one's beating Graham or Davatella if the match matters. Like, if it's an NCAA tournament, you're just not beating them. So that's 2 points on the board, Old North Carolina. I mean, Crawley goes to – the real winner is Fiona Crawley in this scenario, who just wins every match she plays.
Right. She would win at 5 or 6.
But I think they're as good. Like, I think it's a 4-3 match.
Yeah. And that could be true. Certainly we didn't think that coming into the season. But
which it's the point I'm trying to make is this Carolina team, Tengillig is that good. Yarlagadda is that option at 6. Like, I think that – question has been answered, but again, really good weekend for Miami, I would say. And so you continue to feel positively about the Hurricanes as we head towards postseason play. That in mind, how about Daria Freeman and Princeton? Really nice 4-3 win for them over Old Dominion. Consolidating our theory of you just don't want to see them first round of the NCAA tournament because if they're healthy, that team's going to be a nightmare. Now it's noticeable that Startup Save actually beats Freeman in that ODU match, and yet that's indicative of the depth Princeton can have when everyone plays.
Yeah, they had everyone back. They had, Freeman, Hugh, Schvatz, Howard, everyone in the lineup. And they kind of dominated that middle portion of the lineup, which makes sense because of that depth that you talked about, 3, 4, and 5. So it's a good win for Princeton. It's a great win for them. They absolutely needed it. I mean, they have several 0-pointers on their ranking right now just because they don't have many wins. Now they go into Ivy League play. They won't get much ranking boost there. I went on the record about Texas A&M. I'm going to go on the record again, making a prediction here with this Princeton team. You can essentially lock it in now. They will be the 4 seed in Virginia's region.
Yeah. Just lock it in.
Lock it in.
Yeah. I mean,
where else are they going?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to look around. I mean, Ohio State, maybe.
It's less than it's like 300 miles between Princeton and UVA.
Yeah, you'd have to, again, you tell me. Look, They're freaking dangerous. Like,
Very.
I want no part of the Princeton Tigers in that first round of the NCAA tournament. They are right away have whomever they're playing on upset alert. I don't care the number of the seed. And this team's taken a million lumps this year, so they'll be ready for that matchup. But that's a really good win for Princeton, and unfortunately, probably good bounce back win for ODU the next day or 2 days later, I think, against Columbia. But certainly you look for ODU, going to be really tough for them to make a top 16 push at this point as well. I mean, they're in the NCAA tournament for sure, but will they make a top 16 push? It gets a little bit tougher. Upsets of the week. You got a couple of nominations here. You say Oregon over Washington 4-0. I would agree with you there. Clemson over Furman 4-2, certainly surprising. Washington in a top 16 bid could not afford to lose that match to Oregon, though. That's why, to me, it's the biggest upset, because it's the most significant of the results.
Yeah, and the score lines were pretty shocking. I mean, Oregon didn't drop a set, right? They took 6 first sets, and then they took 3 straight set wins. So that was a total thumping from Oregon, which was kind of added to the surprise of the result. And again, this is a Washington team who's had some surprising results, like this loss to Oregon, but some also excellent results on the season. So probably knocks them out of a top 16 seed. They still have a few of the California Pac-12 schools to face, so they could stay in that kind of 20-ish range. But definitely feels like this was a blow that they couldn't afford.
Yeah, it certainly hurts their campaign for top 16 seed. Now they still got some low-hanging fruit on the calendar, and they're going to get the shots at the Stanfords, right, at the USCs, at the UCLAs, hopefully again. But certainly, again, in order to be a top 16 seed, you just got to take care of the matches you're supposed to win, and they were supposed to win this one. Now, credit to Oregon, certainly a good win for the Ducks, but that's when you got to have. If you're Washington. With that in mind, by the way, really good win for Clemson. I don't mean to write that off, because that's a really good Furman team. And Clemson men and women have just been frisky this year. Like, in a way, you see the investment in the facilities, everything slowly paying dividends.
Yeah, and it was a great win because of the comeback from Medvedeva. She came back from 2-6, 4-5, win that match 2-6, 7-5, 7-5, ultimately get the win there. So it was a good win. That's an excellent win over a Furman team that's been solid. And a Furman team that couldn't afford to lose to Clemson. They kind of want to rack up those bottom tier ACC wins. So that was a tough blow for them as well.
100% agree. Well, with that in mind, let's get to our game of good win, bad loss here this week, and we can rapid fire through all of the results. As again, there are plenty for us to cover. Let's start with UNC, who we talked about earlier. 5-2 win for them, over FSU. I think that's just a good win, and again, to me, indicative of UNC teams rolling.
Yeah, I was surprised, though. This was the first time they've lost 2 singles matches since the Oklahoma match at indoors. So that was a surprise. But look, all around, that was a good weekend for FSU.
Yeah, I would agree. And so again, good weekend for that. And that was the other thing I wanted to bring up as well, is that was, in my opinion, probably the best weekend of FSU's season. And is it too little too late? We will find out, but certainly a good result for them. How about Duke knocking off Northwestern? I thought that was a good win for Duke coming into the week, and you figured, okay, they're looking good having it into the Sunshine Swing. That's a nice little rankings boost, the ones you sort of won't think about, but win 7, 8, 9 for them on the resume. That Northwestern win will count come the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I haven't been that impressed with this Northwestern team this year. They're certainly not the Northwestern team we're used to. And Duke didn't exactly roll away with that match. But you're right. I mean, it should show up there on 7, 8, 9. Good, some non-ACC points.
Yeah, again. And in the end, that's what matters. All right, again, we're rapid firing through here. LMU, 4 over Utah. LMU's just good. Like, they're a top 25 team. They should make at least the second round of the NCAA tournament.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Good win. Cal State Fullerton, 4-3 over Utah. Utah was undefeated at one point. That's a tough loss for them.
But a great win for the Cal State Fullerton program.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going good win?
No, I'm going bad loss. But bad loss.
Fair. Arizona State, 4 over Rice.
That's a good win.
I'm so confused about this Arizona State team. On the right week, they look excellent. I really wanted to see them play Ohio State, and that match getting canceled on Sunday, major bummer. Arizona, 4-3 win over Rice. I just think Arizona, obviously men's team last year, what they were able to do, and they're still frisky here this year. I just think watch out for Arizona. Both their men's and women's teams are playing better and better tennis.
Yeah, good. Another, good win.
Yeah.
They're having a good season.
Michigan 4-3 over Wisconsin.
This is like the second or third straight week where we've said like I guess a good win for Michigan because they got the win, but certainly didn't look impressive doing it.
They're a year away. I thought Wisconsin looked really good, and this continues my validate. And I did a full Big Ten breakdown podcast, which you can all listen to on the Great Shot podcast feed, where I waxed poetically about Wisconsin. They are a top 40 team. Like, they just are. They're very good at doubles. And if Markham's going to play this well, and her forehand was just firing in an upset win over Kari Miller in 3 sets, I think they're good everywhere, whether it's Cataldi and, the options they've got at 5 and 6. I think, Shin Tsai has the power tennis to disrupt anyone at the 2 spot when she plays her best. I just think they're going to be up 1-0 against a lot of people. And then they have options. They have different pathways to 4 points in their 6 single spots. I think they should finish a definitive 4th in the Big Ten. I think they should lose to everyone but the 3 sure things: Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern. I think Michigan's a year away. If Michigan makes the quarterfinals this year of the NCAA tournament, it's a massive success. If they make the Sweet 16, that's a great launching point for this team moving forward next year. Ohio State's the team to beat in the conference. I think that's become pretty clear. At the same time, like, in a vacuum, each Michigan singles flight can win any given match. Like, Mesa Chirito can hang with anyone at 6 on the right day. Fliegner can hang with anyone at 5 on the right day, all the way through, again, Serdan, Hammond, Brown, Miller. They're just really bad at doubles, and they're going to be down 0-1. And it's just really hard against the best teams to find 4 points, let alone 4 points consecutively. Now, they've done it against solid teams, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it against the best repeatedly. And it just feels like this is the year they get away with thievery. Next year's the year where they play on their own terms and assert themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
thus, bad loss
for Wisconsin.
Yeah, because they should have won that match. God,
Okay.
should they have won that match? And they needed that one because they've had some 4-3s break just against them, some heartbreakers. And so certainly that was tough. And you just feel like had they been one of ODU or USC or Michigan, just steal one, or Northwestern, then we're not having a debate about if they're an NCAA tournament team. And unfortunately now we do have to. As we keep going through, Nebraska, 4-1 over Purdue, 4-3 over Indiana. I bring this up to say I think Nebraska is Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois is the race to try and get a 5th Big Ten team into the NCAA tournament that only I'm going to nerd out about. But it's a really fun race because I think this Nebraska team is pretty solid.
Yeah, and you've been high on this Purdue team, so that's a good win for the Nebraska team.
Yeah, I have takes. Now I have takes on everything, Jay.
I know.
All right, let's switch to SEC territory. Auburn 6-1 over Arkansas.
Good win. I thought that could have been an upset.
I agree with you. Arkansas 4-1 over Bama. Great bounce back, in my opinion. That's
good
just
win.
Exactly what you want.
They're getting a lot of SEC wins this season.
Yeah. Florida 4-3 over Mississippi State.
Good win.
I would agree. And I think that, again, speaks to the friskiness of the Mississippi State team, who will finish in the bottom 3 probably and of the SEC and outside the NCAA tournament. That's a damn good team.
And they're not getting blown out by anyone. That's the thing.
I would like to see them play Wisconsin because I think that'd be a very fun match. South Carolina 5-2 over Ole Miss. South Carolina is another one of those sleeping on the rise teams I would want no part of come the NCAA tournament, just because I don't want to deal with Hamner and Ackley.
Right. Yeah. And they got that win without Hamner as well. I mean, she played, she took a loss. So that's a good win for South Carolina.
Tennessee, we already mentioned, great bounce back 7-0 over LSU. We got the Arkansas over Alabama. Texas Tech 4-2 over Iowa State. Good win, bad loss.
I think
needed win, I would say, but bad loss. I agree.
Needed win for Texas Tech, but not great.
Kansas 4-2 over SMU.
Good win.
I agree. Kansas State 4-2 over Tulsa.
Another good win.
UCLA cancellations. Bad loss for all of us. It's just huge. So unfortunate.
And the Pac-12. Huge. They blow the Pac-12. I mean, those are 2 matches, 2 wins for teams that they're not going to get, that are going to elevate that conference that's already on this top 16 bubble.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, with all of that said, let's move on now to the rankings, because certainly now is where things get fun. And you've heard us allude to it, top 10 versus top 16. Here's our Cracked Racquets top 16 for all of you here this week. And obviously it's an accumulation of Jay and my rankings in our top 16 looking together. Not much action for us changing at the top. North Carolina still 1, Oklahoma 2, North Carolina State 3. Now we should mention we submitted these to Westhoff before the Pepperdine Cal result was finalized. Obviously, Pepperdine right now, number 4, Cal number 13. And so they'd have a 4th matchup set up hypothetically in the Sweet 16. How hilarious is that, Jay, right now? But obviously, that's going to shift a little bit here. A&M up to 5, highest they've been in our Cracked Racquets poll this season. Texas 6, Georgia 7, Ohio State 8. So those would be your 8 hosts of the Super Region Sweet 16 matches. You look at our 9 through 16 spot, our other host sites right now. We have Miami 9, Auburn 10, Virginia 11, Oklahoma State 12, Cal 13, Stanford 14, Duke 15, and our final hosts, the University of Florida at 16. So most notably there, of course, no Michigan, no UCLA, no Baylor, all those teams just missing out, no LMU, no UCSB, those teams on the outside looking in right now. I mean, your first glance as you look at this top 16, how's it feel?
You're right. I was totally wondering if Michigan made the cut here. That was the first team I was thinking of. No, I mean, these all feel very right. Although with the Pepperdine loss, it's like, oof, do we have Texas A&M at 4? Is that what we're going with? But other than that, I do think these are the right 8, but kind of both of those tiers.
So that's the question I was going to have for you. Yeah. You look at it, does Georgia have enough right now? They, if they beat Auburn, because they haven't played Auburn yet, if memory serves me correct. And so if they beat Auburn, they'd have a win over Auburn, they'd have a win over Ohio State, and they've had a win over Florida, and we've looked good against everyone we've played thus far, card to play. Are those, the win over Ohio State, a potential win over Auburn, are those better signature wins than the wins Miami has over Virginia, over Duke? Like, that's where you're picking margins there. I think for Ohio State, their wins, over Pepperdine, over Florida, over Auburn, I think that sort of speaks for themselves. The close losses to NC State, and I know they lose to Georgia. I think Ohio State's probably got the best wins of the 7, 8, 9 groupings. I think eye test wise, obviously Georgia just beat Ohio State, so that's why they're above them right now. Of the 9 through 16 teams, I would say the one you watch out most for is Cal, because Cal's just now 2 wins over Pepperdine, and they've still got Stanford left on the board. They've got the win over USC as well. If they play UCLA, conference tournament, whatever it may be, they've got that on the board as well. Of the 9 through 16 teams, I think Cal is the one most likely to penetrate the top 8 group, because you just feel like we will get one West Coast representative.
Yeah, and with this Pepperdine win, right, they're knocking on the door. So I think they are right there, and I think that they could threaten to knock off even in Ohio State, right, who just doesn't have much left on the calendar to solidify their ranking. Yeah, I mean, I would throw in a Virginia ACC tournament run.
Right now the Pac-12 is boxed out of the top 8.
Right.
Yeah. Justifiably.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the only team, the best resume team is Cal.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So let's play cross-offs of this group, because if you're not on this list, probably a national championship cross-off. Florida, I don't think we think Florida's winning.
Correct.
I'm not willing to cross off Duke for the strangest of reasons, despite them losing to a shorthanded Florida State, because I swear to God, still the best. Like, it's like, what if Kelly Chen does play her best? And it's like, what if Georgia Drummy is playing her best? What if Chloe Beck is playing her best? Then it's like, you just need one more player to play well for this Duke team, and they're in the hunt against everyone. You want to cross them off?
Yes.
Okay, fine. We can cross them off. Stanford? We crossed them off last week, I believe.
Yeah.
I just think they're a player short. Cal? Leave them uncrossed.
Okay, leave them uncrossed.
I just don't know if they can do it 3 times in a row, but they can definitely do it once against anyone.
Well, that's how I was thinking when you were talking about Duke.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Drummy, Chen, they can all play their best on one day. Can they do it back-to-back days?
All right, cross them off. That's fine with me. Oklahoma State, are we crossing them off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's enough oomph there, but that is a dangerous team. Virginia feels like they're a player short.
Yep, I agree.
Auburn, really good everywhere. I don't know if they could do it 3 matches in a row, though. 4
Do
matches.
do we hold off on this though until we see them actually face Georgia and Texas A&M?
That works for me. Leave them uncrossed. Fine. I mean, they lost to Ohio State, who I believe you have crossed off.
That was indoors.
Yeah. Okay. Leave them uncrossed then. Miami?
Yeah, they're a cross off for me.
I would agree. It feels like give it a year. Wait till Alexa Noel's in the fold, and I promise we will not be crossing them off next season. Ohio State still crossed off?
Yes.
You know I disagree with you there. We litigated this last week. That's fine.
Do you really disagree?
I think they can do it. I do think they can do it because they're just experienced enough. That's the difference. It's like Marzal and Dorme have not played their best tennis yet, and they've had a lot of close losses against a lot of really good teams, right? Like against the NC States of the world, against the North Carolinas of the world, against, the Georgias of the world. Ohio State is yet to take a bad loss. And yeah, they've lost to who? Georgia, North Carolina State, North Carolina, and a team. I'm missing one more loss that they have on their. Oh, and Duke. Like, I don't think the Duke loss at Duke 4-3 that early in the season is a bad loss by any stretch of the imagination. So that's why I can't write them off, is because, yeah, they lost 2 straight matches on the road 4-3 to start the season, but like they've also beaten Pepperdine. I think they have, they went 2-1 in the National Indoor Weekend. And I think this team is calloused enough and experienced enough, right? Like this is the year for them with Dorme and Marzal and Allen and Boulay and Contos all being together as long as they have. That's why I'm not willing to cross them off, because this is the year they should be peaking.
And this could be the year they peak, but is that peak enough for an NCAA title?
So, yes.
Okay.
Like I'm not confident enough about everyone else. So yes.
Okay. All right. We'll leave them on.
All right, we'll leave them. Georgia,
who just beat this team you talked glowingly about 7-0.
I'm not crossing them off. I've told you, I've done a flip on Georgia. I think give Viadmanova and Riasco Lawson 3 sets to A&M. Like give them one more month and one more shot at that match.
Okay. For the record, I would cross off 7 and 8, but we'll leave them on.
The thing I would cross off is Georgia's scheduling this year. With the young team that they have, it's just like, God, I wish they could have played 7 more matches to this point of the season. Texas, I say no cross.
Yeah, I didn't leave them on.
I agree. A&M, we did this earlier, not crossing them off.
Yeah, I think we leave everyone else. Well, the only question is Pepperdine.
Can I cross off Pepper but not Dine? Like I like the Dine. I hate when they pepper it up. No cross off. NC State has to be on. Oklahoma has to be on. Yep. Cross off North Carolina. It's like if they win it, but they're not as good as last year's team, should it count? Like I don't know. That's a debate.
Well, if they remain undefeated, maybe that's when you cross them off. Maybe they need to lose a regular season match.
No, they don't. It's okay. They're doing just fine. Yeah, I mean, all right, we've got 9 teams still left on the board. I think that's pretty good with 6 weeks left to go, 5 weeks left to go. In terms of the teams in top 16 contention, who's next off for you? Is it Michigan? Is it, again, who are your 17, 18, 19 teams still in the mix?
Gruskin, Michigan is not my 17.
Not right now, but they could be. They could be in the mix.
They could be in the mix. For me, it was
they're my 17.
UCLA I think is in this mix. We haven't seen them for a few weeks.
I have them at 19.
Yeah. I think LMU is in the top 25 for sure. Whether they
have them 21
can get up there. And USC and UCF are both teams that I think are talented that can get some wins later this season.
I have UCF 22. They're sneaky in the hunt as well.
Okay, I have UCF at 21. I just don't think they have the wins on the board to.
I agree. That's
to get up there
a little lower.
And honestly, I feel like there's a pretty clear break at the 16-17 mark. Just in terms of wins on the board.
Florida's your pretty solid 16.
And Florida feels like the inflection point.
Yeah, UCLA just hasn't done enough. The West Coast LMUs and UCSBs just haven't quite done enough. I couldn't agree with you more. I think Florida's a pretty good line of demarcation. I think Michigan can catch them, especially with a win on Friday over Ohio State. And with that in mind, let's now look at the week ahead and what we've got coming up this weekend. Obviously, 2 more cross-court casts for all of you on our Big Ten and SEC broadcast. Pepperdine Cal in the books, 2-1. Cal now leads as they take a 4-3 win over Pepperdine. But you look at the battle of undefeated conference foes. UNC versus NC State ACC, Auburn versus Texas A&M SEC, Michigan in Columbus against Ohio State in the Big Ten. Your thoughts on those 3 matches?
I mean, juicy all around, right? I mean, we're getting a 1 versus 2 matchup this weekend. That is extremely exciting. I can't wait to see UNC and NC State face off. I think that is going to be very interesting. It is at NC State, so that is something to note. Look, I think if NC State can take doubles, one of the top 2, can they find a win at 5, at 6? I think that will be very interesting. So I'm fascinated to see that matchup. I think Texas beats Auburn. The question for me is like, how badly do they beat Auburn?
Sure.
Is this like 4-3? Is this another 7-0?
Well, here's what I'll say. Caroline Lilly has a team that they're workhorses, and whether it's Ansari or Arsenault or Ovunk or again Flack or Chen, they're just really good everywhere. Like, yeah. I think, and I've made this comment before, I think Auburn is Texas A&M 0.85. Now, the big swing thing for me in that match is I think as good as Auburn has been at doubles, A&M's just better.
Yeah.
B, the match is in College Station. And I think that's ultimately the 2 swing factors that you have. Look, Makarova, I don't care how good Ariana Arsenault has been this year. I'm taking Makarova over everyone right now. So that's 1 point on the board. With all due respect, again, to the middle of Auburn's lineup, I'm taking Goldsmith against anyone right now. That's a 2nd point on the board. Townsend versus Yu Chen is the undercard match in that match that you should be watching, that we'll spend a healthy amount of time on. But I agree with you. I just think A&M's a better version of Auburn.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
And then in the Big Ten, I do think Ohio State wins this match. Particularly.
Do you? All right. Well, this will be your last appearance.
Particularly just the Michigan results haven't been super impressive of late. But look, Ohio State, if they don't have Dormé back in the lineup, if she's still out of doubles, they have not looked strong in doubles when they have to split up Boulay and Allen. So it's at Ohio State as well, which I think tips the hat.
Friendly wager on this match. I'll take the Wolverines. You take Ohio State. Winner opens the show with the welcome to in next week's deciding point.
Is that wait, like,
is that a reward?
Is that a reward if I win?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else you want to put on the line. You tell me.
We'll have to negotiate something offline.
Okay, I like that. We'll make something on Twitter.
Oh, I have one. I can.
State?
What was it? UNC NC State.
The rematch.
Oh, I'm going UNC.
Yeah, I'm going UNC too. I mean, that's a really fun match, though. I mean, this is it, though. This is the moment for NC State. Like, this is what. They're going to be ready. That's what I would say, is they will be freaking ready for this.
Watch Alana Smith make her appearance in this.
Oh, of course she's going to. Yeah, it's going to have a bionic foot. It's going to be delightful. Yeah, that's a really fun one. I mean, what are you watching for? Can Yarlagadda just keep Yarlagaddaing? And, I mean, how good is Negroho at this point of the season? And can NC State put the pressure on North Carolina at the top of the lineup, as well as, in that center, Crawley, Miller, the rematch. Well, that's going to be great. It's going to be really good. It's going to be really freaking good. All right. Conference undercards on the week. Lay it on me.
I mean, more to watch on the Arkansas, right? They host Tennessee and Georgia.
I think I have you on the Arkansas bandwagon.
Is it you or coach or the coach?
It's both. I've been pushing them hard.
You have.
You. I do apologize.
You have. No,
I think they're really good. Like, again.
Well, I was very impressed with the win over South Carolina.
All the way through, they can freaking play.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, these Arkansas, Tennessee, both those, that would be a great win for both of these teams. And look, I'm curious to see how Arkansas does against Georgia. They didn't do as well as I thought they were going to against Auburn. So it's a good test for them. On the ACC side, right, NC State's also playing host to Duke.
Yeah.
So that's a fascinating matchup where even if NC State loses to UNC, they can still get a top 15 victory.
And doesn't UNC play Wake as well? Isn't that their other one? I think.
Oh, it probably is.
Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head. It's just a North Carolina affair.
Yeah, North Carolina. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So that's a pretty good one too.
I'm expecting a sweep of that match. But yeah, certainly from like just a rankings perspective, right? This is really UNC's weekend to like solidify that top one ranking. And then the other one I just to note is Clemson at Georgia Tech, right? Clemson has some good matches. Obviously, just talking about them beating Furman, they beat Notre Dame. Georgia Tech has looked solid through the end of the season here. So that's one I'm watching. And then in the Pac-12, very curious about Washington, UCLA, the rematch.
Yeah, that's almost a must win for both schools if they want to make top 16 pushes. And so that's a really fun one. One other undercard I would put in terms of a conference play. And again, I believe we're going to have this match on our Big Ten broadcast. Nebraska taking on Northwestern and Illinois at home. If they want to make the NCAA tournament, they have to go 1-1. And so ideally you beat Northwestern, but they have to beat Illinois if they want to make a top 40 push. And so that's another undercard. And we are going to have that match on our broadcast. And so with that in mind, let's put them up on the screen. Super producer Daniel Westoff. Let's start with the Friday broadcast. And the thing I enjoy most is I'm not going to say over the past few seasons that when Chris would start talking Auburn and LSU and Alabama, I would just be offering empty talk to all the listeners, but I did not watch them as religiously as I do this year. And I think the thing that these broadcasts have me enjoy the most is now I actually do have takes on just about every school because I've seen all of them play. But let's look at what we've got Friday, Westoff, on our Crack Rackets SEC cross-court cast. We start with some Kentucky, Florida action. Now, been a really tough conference play for the Kentucky women, but certainly a shot to bounce back against Florida. We've got Arkansas, Tennessee on the women's side.
Good one.
Fascinating. Vanderbilt in must-win mode now as they're going to take on South Carolina. That Auburn A&M, one of our night matches, we'll get to feature as that's a 6 p.m. Eastern time start.
Oh, that's great.
We got a late match day, folks. First match at noon, last match at 7. Now, the good news is it's spread out, so we're going to get to feature everything a little bit more, and I guess that makes things easier for us, but it's going to be a long day, folks. So buckle in as we've got, again, you look overall on day 7 plus 4s, 11, 12 matches. Yeah, makes sense as we hit the heart of SEC conference season. Of course, let's look at the Sunday Big Ten cross-court cast, which, of course, you can find on our Cracked Rackets YouTube channel. We've got 8 matches for you. A little bit more condensed is the action. Nevertheless, Northwestern at Michigan on the men's side. That's going to be delightful. As mentioned, that Iowa Northwestern match, Nebraska taking on Illinois on the women's side. Ohio State, Michigan State should be fun as well, just to see how healthy this Buckeye team is. It's going to be another really fun weekend of action for you. And again, those Friday SEC broadcasts available on all of the team websites. Sunday, we are on our Cracked Rackets YouTube channel. With all of that said, one last shout out, of course, and a huge thank you to our friends at SwingVision for their support of this show. To learn more about them, just click on the link in the description to this podcast. Use that promo code CRACK20 on sign up. Email sales@uniquesports.com, of course, as well, to learn more about our friends at Turna. All of that in mind, another week of college tennis in the books, Jay. Any final thoughts?
No, I think we have another really exciting weekend ahead of us. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we finally hit everything. Yeah, and so with all that said, again, a huge shout out, as always, super producer Daniel Westoff for the work he does. If you're not watching these shows live, you're missing out, folks. Best in the business, and you really should, because we want to hear from you. What are your questions down the season's home stretch? Who are your cross-offs? Do you like the cross-off segment? Let us know, obviously, at AL Gruskin, at J Tweets Tennis, at Cracked Rackets. But with all of that said, for my fantastic co-host, John J. Parsons, super producer Daniel Westoff, our friends at SwingVision and Turn On, from all of us here at both Cracked Rackets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Jay, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.